Welcome back to the Moose Lady Academy and yet another tale from history. And today we're gonna cover something very special. And also in honor of this video, the world's oldest pants that was found in what is today known as China. And you see, these are the world's oldest leggings, I guess. So I just wanted to show them off a little bit because it's so fitting for today's topic. That's enough chit chat, let's get into it. Today, I want to talk to you about a very distant time. A time when the Ice Age had blown over and the climate had shifted since to a warmer and much more habitable climate. Steppes transformed into green leaf-filled forests. Animals wandered higher and higher up north, and food sprouted out of the ground for newer species of animals, which made them find new stationary homes amongst the newly grown grass. For humans, this also meant a lot of wandering. During these times, humans could walk between continental Europe and England, and some of them took a turn towards the right on their wandering and started following the animals up north towards what we now know as Scandinavia. The first humans to enter Scandinavia did so for over 13,000 years ago, and they quickly learned how to utilize the sea. Their main source of food had been seal and fish. And around 1,000 years later, humans also entered Scandinavia from the absolute tip of the north. These people wandered into Scandinavia from the east, from what is now known as Russia. And when these people met, the wanderers from the south and the wanderers from the north, they also quickly mixed. And in a short while, the Nordics had one of Europe's most genetically varied population. And this is where we will begin today's story, around 10,000 years ago. Around 10,000 years ago, around the area of what is today Ulricehamn in Västergötland County, Sweden, a fairly tall and strongly built man was walking around. Or, well, he wasn't just walking around, he was living his whole life, is what I'm trying to say. Standing between 170 to 175 centimeters, which would be considered 5'7" or 5'9". With strong arms and legs, he buried his toes steadily into the soil of these lands. This world was also his home, as it is yours and mine today. His jaw was also strongly built, so strong in fact that his skull had gotten a little bit cone-shaped, as a matter of fact. Sometime during his 45th to 60th year old life, his teeth had gotten worn down and an infection had set traces into the left top of his jaw, which probably made him only being able to chew on one side of his face. He was born and raised in inland Sweden, so saltwater fish and any food from the sea, it wasn't meant for him. But where he grew up, there was enough of different foods. He never had to starve. His life came to an end close by a lake. If it was by age, by an injury, or by drowning, we don't know. We know that he was probably not buried on the beach of this lake. His skeleton was too scattered around, and no grave goods were ever found. So maybe his burial was the water. This is the tale of the Briad Gorge Man, one of 3 skeletons found from the same era in Sweden. This era is the Mesolithic, the middle of the Stone Age. And today, I will have the exciting privilege to come face to face with the oldest man of Sweden. In June of 1994, the owner of a farm named Briad Gorge had hired an excavator operator to make open bodies of water in a swampy area of one of the farm's arable land. June of 1994 was a very warm and dry month, so this wasn't too hard of a task of the experienced operator Per-Åke Jansson, who found a way to get the excavator all the way out to the usually very wet area. Just a moment after he started digging, he reacted to an object in the scoop. The object fell out of the scoop and onto the ground. What Per-Åke had accidentally dug up was nothing less than a human skull. The police was called. During closer inspection, more and more skeletal parts were collected around the area where the excavator had been digging. The jaw and a femur, which is a thigh bone, was sticking out of the wall of the dug-up soil. Luckily, it could pretty quickly be confirmed that this was not a contemporary crime that had taken place. First, it was thought that this might be a fallen soldier from a war taking place during the 1500s. But the skeleton found 1.2 meters underneath the land surface was one of the best preserved, oldest human remains in Scandinavia. Archaeologists could confirm that this was indeed a man that had died during the Mesolithic era, and when studying his DNA, they could also tell that he had ancestors that had walked into Scandinavia from the east. His DNA also put him into a context regarding which group he belonged to. He is what we call a Scandinavian hunter-gatherer. He had both traces of hunter-gatherers from the east, mainly, but also the nomads that had entered Scandinavia from the south. He is the result of this mix that experts theorizes happened after the end of the big ice melting. He would be roughly around the 50th generation since. He was taller than average for his time. Men were usually around 168 centimeters, that would be around 5'6". The environment and climate period he lived in is named Boreal, which you might recognize from names such as Aurora Borealis, which is Northern Lights, and Hyperborea, which is a Greek term from ancient Greece, which roughly means the most far northern parts of the known world. This environment had birch and pine woodlands, and the newly introduced hazel tree, alder tree, oaks, and elm trees. The dominating creature of the forest would have been the mooses. There were also herds of aurochses and lynxes, hares, deers, boars, and beavers swimming around. Of course, foxes and wolves were also present in this landscape, as well as brown bears and wild cats. It was a very dynamic and new and fresh time in the history of Scandinavia, and Sweden in particular, where this man lived. I wonder how he viewed his surroundings. How did he sleep at night? How did he think about his long life? What did he accomplish beyond what we can tell by his skeletal remains? Did he ever truly love someone? Did he have children? Could he play any instruments? There has been finds from these times of flutes and drums and wind spinners, creating beautiful music. What data can tell us is that he probably didn't exist all alone. He probably lived in a group made out of his closest relatives and family. They would have resided in huts, very much like this one, made out of straws, poles, hides, and moss. Usually, these groups existed in a couple of designated spots during different seasons of the year. This type of group, when compared through later periods as hunter-gatherer societies, could have consisted of around 200 to 300 members. Spread out on a larger scale of land, around 50 square miles. They would probably also have contact with neighboring groups for trade or for more violent meetings. And here he is. From examining his bones, it was clear that this man was born and raised and never left his birthplace. The hunter-gatherers during the Mesolithic era didn't live an uncomplicated life. Even though they haven't showed any signs of malnourishment or serious sicknesses, they have much more tear and accident-caused injuries in their skeletons than remains found more south in Europe from the same era. A peculiar detail is that during the excavation, the archaeologists also found 3 areas of burned wood, contemporary to when the Briad Gorge Man's body would have ended up there. Could it have been from a burning boat? Maybe little fires on rafts? Was there a camp here during the time he died? Was it his camp? I so wish he could talk, but even if he could, I probably wouldn't understand a word. Today, his skeleton is kept at Sweden's National Historical Museum, called Historiska. Because this find is unique and of governmental interest. And that's kind of what they do in Stockholm. They claim everything that is of importance of the country. It was not them, however, who made this reconstruction idea come to life. It was the local history society, or home village society as we call them in Swedish, of Ulricehamn, the little county where the Briad Gorge Man was from. They decided to pay for it. So, they got in contact with one of the best within this field, archaeologist, reconstructionist and artist, Oskar Nilsson. The reconstruction is heavily based upon the skull, of course, but also the DNA analysis. The DNA provided with what skin complexion and eye color he would have had. Also, that he would have likely had some red tints in his hair, but probably he had an overall dark blonde or light brown color to his hair. The reconstruction technique is very impressive and interesting in itself. It is based upon the thickness of the face tissue, distributed upon several anatomical points. There are a range of different measurements. These are general measurements, of course, based upon age, sex, ethnicity, and weight. When all of these factors are known, 32 points are put out over the face in the shape of wooden spikes. And here we see the process. Muscle by muscle, this face is being built upon. The ears are the most speculated upon shape in this whole reconstruction. His clothes are based upon the surrounding ecosystem, what animals was available, and which one would have been mostly beneficial to use. It is also worth mentioning that the famous ice mummy, Ötzi, who was found in the Alps, has contributed to the interpretation of the Briad Gorge Man's clothes. Because Ötzi's clothes were very well preserved, and a great example of different techniques that would have been used during the Stone Age. even though the Briad Gorge Man is around 4,000 years older than Ötzi. Therefore, his suit would not contain any cattle skin, because farming hadn't reached Sweden yet. Some of the inspiration going into his garments also come from photographies of indigenous people's garments from Siberia. The world's oldest pants, found in today's China, is around 3,000 years old. And it is not thought that pants would have been used during the time of the Briad Gorge Man. So he is actually not wearing pants, but rather long leather socks tied together around the waist. His shoes are based upon the world's oldest shoes found in Armenia that dates back 5,500 years. However, these shoes were made out of cow skin, which is not something that the Briad Gorge Man's shoes would be made out of. And here he is now, our time traveler. I saw him at the Ekehagen's ancient village, an outdoors museum and activity center in Sweden. But he will probably be moved to a bigger museum soon enough. But right now, he is not too far away from where he actually lived all of his life. You know the feeling when you look upon the sky and you simultaneously make the realization that hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of people are doing the same thing today as you are doing, maybe even at the same time that you're doing it. Looking up at the same sky, into the same stars, the moon, hiding their eyes from the same sun that stings their eyesight. We are all part of this, together, not just through borders, but through time as well. Thank you for watching and following along on this journey together with me. I hope you discovered something new or learned something. Have a nice rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Hej då!